I'm
Right.
so sad. I'm wondering if I'm going to even do these debates anymore because, Lewis, I think if you and I were hanging out, we would have such a nice time if we were talking about anything else. I think that
I think you seem
you
like a
come
nice guy.
across to me as such a nice person. You come across to me as a thoughtful person. You come across to me as a funny person. So, um, I'm sorry that we're arguing over something like this, and maybe there's no point because I think the way we use words are different. When I hear you say things, I take them at face value. But when I ask you, then you what feels like to me, you retreat into this kind of like gobbledygook of philosophy. And you may be right. Like it may just be beyond my limited intellectual capacity to understand these things deeply. And and I may have a totally gross and misunderstanding of Christianity. And I think though, what I think you were saying is, and I could be wrong, towards the end you were saying, "No, I don't want to force Christianity on anybody." Not at all. I think what you were saying is, it would be nice, you think it would be good, if people organically, on their own, through their own reflection or reasoning, came to accept certain truths that you think are loving, just, and right. And to you, there's like, what would be wrong with that? Like, if we all sort of accepted the love of Jesus and the love of God, and we all lined ourselves with that, society would be a good place. And actually, you might be right about that. I think there's a strong case to be made that there are basic Christian teachings that make for better life and make for a better society. I think we would have less violence if people were Christian. I think we would have less torture. I think we would have less inequality. I think we would have a more equal society, a more forgiving society. So all of that, like, you may have sold me on that point. Um, if that's what you mean by Christianity, and yes, I appreciate that you would want it to come about organically. You don't want it to be a top-down forced thing. I guess my response is I believe, and maybe I can't prove it, or maybe I can, in something called humanism, which has similar values to your version of Christianity. That is, let's try our best to alleviate suffering. Let's be loving and forgiving with each other. Let's be honest with each other. Let's try and treat people the way we want to be treated. And I believe those values and principles are self evident. In other words, you can experience life that way. You can experience life where everybody's lying, cheating, stealing, and being violent. And you can experience life where people are being caring, compassionate, empathetic, and cooperative, and see which provides better flourishing, better health, better well being. I would also like to see that organically emerge. I would like people to just embrace the values of secular humanism. I think, and I could be wrong, that adding that level of supernaturalism causes more problems than it answers. But obviously, I'm in a minority here. The vast majority of humans like this. The supernatural makes sense to them. It seems reasonable. It seems rational that there's, this magical invisible deity that you can, I guess, mentally or verbally send messages to, and that deity already has a plan, but will sort of decide whether or not to accept your prayer or not. But if the deity already is all knowing and has a plan, I don't even know what the point of praying is. Why not just say it's all God's will? So I never really understood that. But that's again, and I apologize to Lewis for, I know I interrupted a lot. I know I was snarky a lot, and I have to say you weren't at all. Like you never were snarky with me. I think you were just really trying to stick to ideas. So I thank you for that. But at the end of the day, I think we just are talking past each other because, even when you say something like everybody has to accept Christ in their heart, like, I don't really know what that means. It's a nice, I understand the words. It's like, it's a sentence, but it's poetic to me. It's sort of like, and in the end, the love you make is equal to the love you take, which I kind of understand, or, you know, it's a statement that we hear a lot, but I don't really know what it means. Like Jesus Christ in my heart, and it's mystical maybe, but it's mystical to me and mysterious to me, and I don't have access, I guess, to that level of understanding or feeling, and maybe you do. Um, so I guess I would end, if anybody's still watching, by saying that maybe these debates don't do any good because Maybe they bring out the worst in me. I don't think they bring out the worst in Lewis. I think that's one of the things I most philosophers I know are really good at just sticking to ideas. But I didn't understand a lot of it. I feel like you were hiding behind a lot of mystical, poetic, mysterious verbiage that doesn't doesn't line up with the sort of basic statements that Christians make about their faith, about how they see the world. And then I guess I would end by saying I think the values of secular humanism are often in line with the great religions of the world, Christianity, Islam, Judaism, but I think that's because of our shared humanity. I don't think it's because there's a magical, invisible deity who somehow makes it all this way. I guess I'll end that way.
All right, thank you, Phil. And now for your closing remarks, Lewis, and I'll give you 1 minute longer as well. So you have 6 minutes.
All right, yeah, thanks, and thanks again, Phil. I think, to be fair, I think you did a nice job. I don't think that you believe me for the internet. I think that you are civil and charitable. I don't think that you twisted my words or really like I've had some pretty bad experiences, so I don't think that this has been bad at all, really.
Perfect.
But thank you for at least the sort of um, your approach to this and in this respect and your closing statement. So yeah, I think that the primary difference between us is that how we view Christianity and what we view it to be is a big one. I think that we have there's a big divide there, and I think that that when you say that you're not sure of the value of of engaging in these conversations because of what seems to be this divide, right? It seems to be fostering more disagreement than necessarily needs to happen because we would get along fine. And I think that we would get along fine. I don't have any feelings about you negatively as a person. You seem like a nice guy. And I'm pretty sure that we would both not vote for Trump, right? So, like, like, if, like, there's probably like political, ideological, ethical overlap there between us that even from a sociological perspective, maybe it's the result of, I don't know, academia, maybe it's the result of higher education, maybe it's the result of, I don't know, just not being racist. I don't know. Right? So,
Right.
you know, and so in many ways, yeah, 100%. Like, and I think that that's I can see the issue there. It's like, well, maybe this is causing division and the conversation. If we just allow the differentiation without the conversation, perhaps we would just foster a more loving environment. And by trying to encourage these conversations, perhaps we're actually fostering that which we're trying to stamp out. And I think
Mm,
that there is something to be said there that there's a risk, but I think the risk is warranted, and primarily for the fact that if we don't expose each other to external critique, then we risk becoming increasingly dogmatic. And
right.
and allowing an environment in which we don't, foster the ideas, entertain the ideas of others is something that I think is too much of a risk. And I think that that's one of the biggest problems of the United States is that there is this divide, political divide, and Alistair McIntyre talks about this between the right and the left, which has created an incommensurability between people where they don't even understand what each other are saying anymore.
Mm,
And that the form of reasoning that they use is just opposite, and that there needs to be something that they appeal to resolve this, and that's only going to happen from a radical form of empathy. Like, why does someone think this way? Why would someone engage in this way? And I think that's what this kind of conversation can also foster. We can respond to it in a way which is radically empathetic. You can think, well, why is this person engaging like this? Why, if I was
mhm,
them, why would I be thinking this way? And that's what I would hope, like, that we're doing here. And so that maybe that's the overall the biggest benefit of all between this is just to encourage this sort of pro sociality and mutual respect. Um, and likewise, from your perspective, I can understand why there is this risk. I mean, you look towards historical wars, you look towards dogmatism, especially in the United States. For example, people saying that I wouldn't be Christian. Like, as you started it, like many Christian. And I mean, I've been told I'll burn in hell before. Like, so I can understand. I suppose that the issue is that it's not something that's going to resolve itself. It's just we're going to have to confront it head on. And I hope that we do resolve it. And the thing is that the main difference, I think, that from this perspective is that I would say that we need to be able to say that we will appeal to something. And I think that you revealed that a sort of metaphysical basis from when you say the secularism, when you're saying you appeal to humanity, that you believe that there is a common element in humanity. And that it's actually not that you're a subjectivist, that we all have different opinions, that there is actually a common human element from which we can appeal to, that we can
Mm.
know and understand. And I think that's present there. And I think in what you've said there at the end. And if that's the case, in many ways that shares a lot with Christianity. And perhaps ideologically we're more similar than we are dissimilar. And what we then, the only difference would really be, where does it come from? Why do we believe this? How do we understand this? Which is a lot less of a hill to overcome than, you know, I'm right, you're wrong. Why, how, or like, I think this, you think that. How do we resolve it? There's nothing to appeal to. So in the same respect as that the Pope said, Catholics and Marxists could work together. Marxists believe the same sort of thing, right? This idea that there is a common element to humanity. Perhaps we can be ideological allies in the sense of going, okay, there is this common good that we should work towards. Even if we fundamentally disagree on certain things and how we understand that good, we'll talk about what it is good, how we understand what is the common good between us, and then hopefully at least approach, the general good. Maybe there'll be nuances that we don't agree with. Maybe there'll be things that we can't resolve. And will result to debate further on. But maybe at least if we first foster the empathy to approach one another with a political, political compassion, maybe that we'll bridge the gap and make society a better place anyway. So just to summarize, thank you again for the conversation. I think that secularism is not in and of itself bad. I think that it's a movement in history, and I do hope for this sort of development of an organic Christianity that develops democratically through these sort of radically empathetic debates between individuals. And hopefully, if we use our reason, our God-given reason, then we can come to a faith that is beneficial for everyone. So thank you.
All right. I want to thank the both of you.
Thanks for that.